Okay, so the next deck will cover, or the next faction will cover Scoia'tael, but I'm gonna touch on this spell deck first. I just made this for the recording. I didn't have it here because, anyway, we'll talk about that. But these two are the ones I recommend more. But let's cover this real quick. So, all right. So here's the spell deck. Okay. So this is a control deck that uses a lot of interactive spells to generate like a large win condition in the third round, or whatever it may be. You may be pushed in the second round and then have to use a gold or something like that. But the deck, basically the function of the deck is to play spells to be able to buff your units so that you get additional tempo and things like that. So it's highly interactive, which is nice, which obviously that's what control decks are. And you do get to have like a second use of your best spell in your graveyard, which is really cool. Like, I think that's actually awesome that this hero power does that. That's actually really cool. But the deck, I feel like the deck itself is not just, I don't feel like it's good enough. And I know that there are a lot of players. As a matter of fact, I was watching Crokies today in the morning for me, my time. And he was literally arguing the same thing. Like, he thinks that this might be the best deck in the game, and I'm just like, I'm like, no, dude, come on, man. But he does make good points about it. But I'm just talking in terms of playing against it. Like, I feel like this deck is so easy to beat. Let me just explain what I'm talking about. Maybe I'll just cover this for Scoia'tael, but I'll explain what I'm talking about here. So, if you know that the deck's function is based on playing spells, right? They're going to interact with your board. That's fine. So, they need a Farseer in play, or a couple of them or something. Or they have to use one of their protectors or a gold or something like that to be able to generate points, right? So that's just a huge like weakness of the deck. It's just like insane. So if the guy has a Farseer in play and he's playing spells, right? How much tempo is he actually creating during the turns? Just think about it. This guy gets buffed by 2. Like, this is assuming he has a protector in hand, whatever. Let's just assume he does. He's getting buffed by 2. So, okay, he thunders something and gets buffed by 2. He played 9 points. Or with a mercenary, he played 10. Like, so what? Like, he played 10 points that turn. You can just, like, out-tempo this deck so hard. Either, and I'm not talking about even getting rid of the Farseer. Like, if you can get rid of the Farseer and they don't have another one, maybe they have to use a double cross to find another one, and then they have one and whatever. But that's not even the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is the deck doesn't generate enough tempo to maintain like the points in a round, even with a Farseer in play. Like, you can just outpower this deck so hard. And then let's say that they manage to make it to the late game, right? So you're in a late game scenario where you know for a fact that they've used 1 or 2 of these, or maybe all 3, and they have... This is actually the reason that I built this version this way to show in the video. Like, it's so exploitable for the opposing player to know, like, they have to play protectors to get points. So I'll just hold my, whatever, Igni or Scorch or Hailstorm and just line their guys up and they can't do anything, right? So I just built this deck this way where you have like a Glaeus for, additional reach or different play potential instead of just playing these guys. And Zoltan, so you can obviously, let's say in the mirror they have a Gwent protector, or, multiple of them. You can Zoltan, line them up, take off the Gwent, and then Hailstorm. Example, right? Some additional plays. But the point is, when you're playing against this deck, they have very, very limited ways to create points. Like, they have Farseers, and they have Protectors, and then they have a bunch of spells, which are just single point, you know, like bursts or whatever, without staying on the board, which have to interact with you. So, even if they don't, it's like, it's kind of like these spells don't do anything, really, dude. Like, they can play a spell to interact with you, and it's just subtracting from your points, but not really giving them any. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, their Protectors are getting buffed, but if they don't have anything on the board, they can't just play a spell to win that round. That's what I'm saying. Like, obviously, a double cross doubles as a unit and a spell. That's not what I'm trying to say. You guys, I think you guys get what I'm trying to say by now, but I feel like this deck is really, really easy to beat, so I don't feel like it's tier 1. I know Crokies disagrees with that, but I just don't. So let me show you guys what I actually think is better. One of them is Pumpkin's deck. I think it's a really cool deck. I'll show you guys more like a Freddybabes version of Scoia'tael, where it's a movement deck. This is what I think is way more solid, probably a better deck in general. This is adjusted. Freddy played 2 gold weathers, obviously, like before people adapted to the Scoia'tael movement type of thing. So this is adjusted for that, so that people will probably hold their weather clears and stuff like that until you show them all your golds. But this deck, the point is, you play marksman, so it has extreme synergy in this deck. Whenever it gets moved, it deals damage, or whenever you move one of theirs, it will deal damage to it. So you play the dwarves that pull movers, which is nuts. Obviously, the marksmen are like huge in the deck. They're just so huge. Single row weather clear plus a move for the monster decks, or if you just like, if you know a Skellige player setting up a lacerate, just like move your stuff out of the row, you know, who cares. Then these are super synergistic. Like, marksman on board with Geralt or Luche5i is just like game winning most of the time, almost every time. And obviously Iglace, this card is just nuts. And Scoia'tael. I put an Igni in here. This is just an example list, but I think it's probably fine. I was actually thinking about the Skellige deck when I put this in, because they can't really do anything about it if they just have like a bunch of harpooners or a bunch of the discard guys that res stuff. You can just put them all in a row and Igni them. They can't really interact with that. This is just random. I just think this card's pretty good. And then the silvers, you know, you have synergy, movers, this pulls a mover, this moves and locks. Yavin, of course, you can stack him on the row you want to lacerate and stuff like that. Like, I think this is way more solid, and probably just in general, maybe the power level isn't strictly as powerful as a spell deck, but I think it's just way more solid. And I'll show you guys like a pumpkin type. Pumpkin, you guys get it? Pumpkin for Halloween, but actually it's Pumpkin the streamer. So alright, so I was watching a stream yesterday, so I was trying to make improvements. Like, when I'm going to improve a deck, I put the initial there, L, since I play under the name Luche5i. I just, you know, it's Pumpkin's deck, but I'm making a little bit of an edit. So this deck is actually a really cool deck. When I was watching him play it, I was pretty surprised. Well, not this list, since this is a completely edited version of his deck, but when I was watching him play the deck, the basis is the dragoons and supports, and you play spy, summoning circle, Siri, so you can get card, you either get card equilibrium or card advantage back, which is really cool. So the problem with his list was that it didn't generate much tempo, so Pyrotechnician is a lot of tempo with the agitator pulling it. So that's the improvement to the deck that he was thinking about yesterday. So when I was looking at the list, I was looking at the first lights, and I was like, I mean, I feel like it's not great. I'm not sure about his exact reasoning to play First Lights, but I think you can play Brigade and it's great. Like against Dagon, of course, so good. Also, synergy in the case that the opponent isn't playing Weathers, right? If you have First Lights in your hand and they're not playing Weathers, all you're going to do is play it for Rally and just pull some random bronze unit. So instead of that, which would be, you know, like any of these things, instead of that, if the opponent doesn't play Weather, you can play this as a road manipulating unit. So you can either move your things out of Lacerates or whatever it may be, or Ignis or something, or move theirs into Pyrotechnician rows so that you generate more points. I think it's just better. I don't know, in my opinion. And then I put in Carol. I don't know if he was going to play that or not, but that also does the same thing. If they're stacking a row to try to avoid this, you can unstack it, deal a bunch of damage and stuff like that. Like, I think these versions of Scoia'tael, not that this is solid because these are experimental, but I think in general, you're going to be happier playing this type of stuff than the spell deck. I just don't think... I'm talking about against good opposition, right? What I mean is when you're reaching the higher ranks of ranked or pro ladder or whatever, when the opponent will play well against you, the spell deck I don't think is a very strong deck. I think it's very easy to play around that deck. But those are some ideas for Scoia'tael that are not the spell deck. So, alright, let's cover Northern Realms last, finally.